Port Réunion, a French island in the middle of the Indian Ocean that most people wouldn't be able to point out on a map, including me before this voyage. And yet, it is part of France, part of the European Union, part of the Eurozone, so they even use the euro. There are French road signs, French supermarkets, and still it's 10,000 kilometers away from Paris. That already tells you this will be an interesting stop.
We arrived the day after Mauritius, and the contrast was immediate. Where Mauritius felt comparatively flat, Réunion rises out of the ocean like it's trying to escape it. Massive mountains, steep cliffs, and two volcanoes, one of which is still very much active.
Réunion has close to 1 million inhabitants, and the ethnic roots come from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, and Madagascar. The population is very diverse because of its colonial history. The main spoken language is Creole, but the official language is French. And currently, as I mentioned, is not a colony, is not a territory, it is France. It has the same status as any region in France, which is wild when you look at a map and see how far away from France it actually is. When the French arrived here in the 17th century, the island was completely uninhabited. There was no indigenous population, nobody. And there's a story that I find interesting here, and I got this from the tour guide on the island. France initially sent mutineers here as a punishment. The idea was to strand them on a remote island and let nature take care of the rest. But they didn't die, they thrived. And that made it interesting for France to think again about this island. Apparently, that made them reconsider that this might be a place worth investigating. And that was the start of colonization for France on this island. Like Mauritius, which we visited the day before, the colonizers built the economy purely on sugar production, first using enslaved people and later indentured laborers. There were also periods of coffee and vanilla cultivation. The island essentially became a machine for producing things that Europe wanted, at the cost of people who had no choice. I joined the peace boat tour on the island, and something happened which was very unexpected. The tour guide introduced herself, and it turns out she's from Vienna, Austria, the city where I've lived for many years, the city where this journey actually began. She left Vienna decades ago, first moved to Madagascar, and then settled in Réunion about 20 years ago. And there we were, two people from the same city, standing on a French island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It gave me a chance also to speak German again, which was fun. The world really is small.
We walked through the capital, Saint-Denis, founded in 1696, through a local market with fruits and vegetables, where I watched someone crush fresh sugar cane right in front of me, fed it through this press, and out came this raw, slightly cloudy juice, a direct line back to what the island's entire economy was built on. In Saint-Denis, along the coastline, there are old French cannons, placed there in the 18th century to defend against British attacks. History is literally sitting on the waterfront. But the thing that genuinely piqued my interest was a statue of a man named Roland Garros. Now, if that name sounds familiar and you're thinking tennis, you're right. The Roland Garros Stadium in Paris, where the French Open is played every year, is named after this man. But Roland Garros was not a tennis player. He was an aviator, a pioneer. He was born right here in Saint-Denis in 1888, and in 1913 he became the first person to fly across the Mediterranean Sea from France to Tunisia, 780 kilometers, 8 hours in the air, He landed with 5 liters of fuel left in the tank. 5 liters. And if that weren't enough, during World War I, he developed the first aircraft with a machine gun that could fire directly through the propellers. Before that, you couldn't shoot forward from a plane without destroying your own propeller. He solved that problem. He died in combat in 1918.
Réunion also has what's been called world's most expensive road. It's a coastal highway that's 12.5 kilometers long, and the cost? Approximately 1.6 billion euros. That's around 130 million euros per kilometer.
The reason it costs so much is the geography. You're essentially trying to build a road along steep volcanic cliffs where there's no flat ground, subject to rockfalls, sea conditions, and every possible engineering challenge you can imagine. There have been technical problems, environmental objections, funding disputes, and when I was there, it still wasn't fully operational.
There's a part of Réunion's history that I find particularly powerful. During the colonial period, enslaved people who escaped the plantations would not flee to the coast, but instead they would go up into the mountains, to very uninhabitable terrain, to where the colonizers couldn't or wouldn't go.
One of those places is called Cirque de Mafate. It's one of the most remote and inaccessible parts of the island. No roads reach it. You can only get there on foot or by helicopter. And that's exactly why people fled there. To live free, on their own terms, in the most extreme terrain the island had to offer. That history is still part of the island's identity.
Which brings me to the race, because apparently at some point people looked up at these steep rugged mountains and imagined a race course. Réunion hosts an annual ultra trail race called Diagonale de Fous, in English, Diagonale of Fools. The name is meant as a joke, but also as a badge of honor, because you have to be a little bit foolish to actually attempt this.
The route goes from Saint-Pierre in the south to Saint-Denis in the north, diagonally across the island. The distance is approximately 170 kilometers. The elevation gain is 10,000 meters. That's the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest from sea level, across volcanic terrain, through the same mountains where escaped slaves hid for generations because nobody else would go there. Up to 2,350 people attempt this race every year. 1 in 3 doesn't finish. The fastest person completed it in under 24 hours. We had a fellow passenger on the peace boat who had run this race, not once, but multiple times. He gave a presentation on board about the experience, what it's like to keep moving through the night, through the pain, through terrain that wants to defeat you. I sat in that presentation just trying to imagine it.
Réunion was an interesting place, a French island that isn't quite French, a history of escape and survival embedded in the mountains, a road that cost millions per kilometer, a race that attracts fools from all around the world, and a tour guide from Vienna. My curiosity brought me here, and it was a place where I learned a lot. If something in this episode about Réunion surprised you, or if there's something about the island that you know but that I didn't mention, drop it in the comments. I read every one of them. Next, we're going to Madagascar. I'll see you over there.